Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards. You know, things that I love doing about this show, the amazing individuals that we have on as guests, the inspiration our guests share, the vulnerability our guests share, and sharing a message, getting a message that's out there and using their voice. And hopefully, someone will hear this show today and it'll change their life. So our guest today is Justin Heflin. Did I say your last name right, Justin?
You did. Yeah.
Awesome, because I have a way of slaughtering things sometimes. And we're gonna talk about 8 seconds of clarity. And the reason why I wanted to use that is because I was curious what he meant by that on his bio. And we shared a little bit about it, or he shared a little bit about it before we got started. So I'm going to let him tell you guys what he means by 8 seconds of clarity. Because really, Justin, that's 8 seconds of clarity has to do with like spirituality or a higher power. Is that correct?
Yeah. Definitely for me, my experience. Yeah. Um, I got it when I explained what happened to my sponsor, uh, he's the one that kind of said, yeah, you got 8 seconds of clarity. Um, and there's a point in the big book, the founder Bill's story where he and for AA, he talks about for a brief moment, I needed and wanted God. And after that, everything changed for him. He was separated from alcohol for the last time, and he went on to be sober for the rest of his life. And my experience, this is all hindsight now, though. Like when I realized I didn't realize exactly what it was until later on. When you're going through this process, it's sometimes we don't see things until they're pointed out to us. And but for like 8 seconds of clarity for me, was that point when I had just left rehab. Heroin was my drug of choice. It started with alcohol and progressed. Used a lot of opiates to deal with the hangovers, and which progressed into OxyContin, which progressed to heroin. But anyway, so I was in the rehab. I was separated from the dope. They'd given me Subutex, and I'd stopped the day before I was going to leave home. I was only there for like 8 days. And I went home. I was feeling great, like Subutex was still in my system. And for some reason, about 1 o'clock in the morning, like as the evening progressed, I started feeling crappier and crappier. My body, that detox was coming back. Subutex was wearing off. Real antsy and anxious, and everybody had went to bed, and my fiance at the time, the woman I was with then, we decided me having a phone wasn't a good idea. Me having access to money just coming out wasn't a good idea. And everybody was sleeping, so I ran upstairs to her son's bedroom and took his phone. Then I snuck and got her car keys, went out to the car, and I took some money out of her purse. And I sat down and I just wanted to sleep, like at this point, withdrawals are kicking in real hard. I just can't rest. I'm anxious, and I'm thinking in my head like, man, I can get some dope real quick, and just use tonight. I can sleep good. Tomorrow we can rock and roll on this recovery thing, like no one has to know. Just use this one time. And um so I get the phone, and I got the number. I know the number by heart, called it frequently, and I called this person and he didn't answer. And I was like, shit, well, any good dope fiend like me, is going to have multiple people they can call. So just as I'm about to call this other person, just like something washed over me. In that moment, like, and for me, I say it's God. God gave me 8 seconds of clarity. He stopped me in my tracks and just like showed me, convinced me that if I continued down this path, I was going to die. That it wasn't going to be just once. It never is. Like my brain is lying to me. This disease is lying to me. It's trying to convince me that I could use once tonight, sleep, and that'll be it. That's a lie. And so with all clarity, he just showed me what was going to happen. And with that, I was faced with a choice. And I chose to put the phone up, put the money back, go crawl into bed. Um, I didn't understand how profound that moment was until I started the process. It sucked. Every bit of it sucked, and I didn't want to do it. But like an experience like that, when I'm just so anxious and my mind's racing, and all I can think about is getting high, to have such clarity in that situation, to realize that if I do this, I'm going to die. But for my higher power.
Wow. When you first started talking about that, man, I was covered in goosebumps because I am a firm believer of a higher power who I call God, right? And it's amazing how sometimes, he wants us to help ourselves, but sometimes I think he knows that we're not able to, right? And he does reach down and I like to say he just kind of knocks us upside the head, like wake up, right? Pay attention. And what you said is about, just using one time. I'm just going to use tonight. Everything's going to be fine. I just had that recently happen in my life with somebody, and I ended up having to call 911. They had to come and get her. And the next day, when she called me, she was saying that I just thought I was going to be able to do just that once, right? And then I was going to get my act together and things were going to be great because it just happened on Thanksgiving too, right? I was on my way to the gym Thanksgiving morning, got a phone call, couldn't understand a word she was saying, and I had to get her to the hospital. And all it took was another week, you know. And like you said, that just once doesn't happen, and a lot of times that just once really is the end for that individual. I've heard that so many times, right? And it's not like I've heard it from the people who lost their life. I've heard it from the people that were close to them that said, "I'm just going to do this. This is it. I'm not going to do any more," and then they don't ever recover.
Yeah, that's I think a lot of that problem too is when we go back out, we think we can do as much as we were doing before. That just one, and the fentanyl. Um, I think back to all my in and outs of recovery prior to this, that like how many times I was convinced that just once, just gonna do it this one time, and I got no problem, and it's never been successful. And I'm by God's grace, I've made it back, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah, yeah, and you're 2 years in. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little over 2 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. And like you said, it's been a fight, right? The start of it, I'm sure, is a fight, and even probably even a year down the road, it's still a fight at times.
Yeah, there's definitely phases. In the beginning, like the first year of it is you're fighting to stay sober, essentially. Like I work a program, part of a 12-step, program, and like my sponsor very adamant about running our group militantly, uh, and by the book, how the big book is written, how it was designed, how the first 100 got sober. We don't screw around. If you read the big book, you see that build happens pretty rapidly within a day or two. If you read it, it's hard to put a timeline on it, but Abby was with him for 24 hours pretty much, and he ran through his steps. And like when I came that next day and asked for help from him, he I I have to say that I have to tell this part because this is the kind I need a foot up my butt. I needed a foot up my butt. And this guy's loud, he's known around our club, and I won't say he's very confident in his program and what he has, and like comes off as arrogant. Some people are put off by him, but I knew I needed somebody that wasn't scared to hurt my feelings. And I'd watched him for a couple of years as I was going in and out, and he came upstairs from one of his meetings, and I like walked over to him all shy and like, "Hey, are you still doing those meetings?" Literally just watched him come up from the meeting, and looked at me and he goes, "You know what? You're gonna shut the F up. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go home and pray." And he said, "If you want this, you be here Sunday morning at 7 a.m. We're going to run you through a 1, 2, 3, which is the first 3 steps, and we're going to get you moving. But if you show up, make sure you're ready to work." And then he dismissed me,
Hmm.
just like dismissed me. And I found that attractive. I found that like, this is like do or die right now. And so we did. I showed up Sunday morning at 7, and he kept me busy, with all the step work, the inventories, bunch of other writing my amends, and didn't stop. So like for
Wow.
those first couple months in this process, I was so busy working on my recovery, working on the steps, that like before I knew it, the obsession to use was gone. It was just lifted. And and you keep working your program pretty solidly. You keep going through your steps. You're doing service work within that first year. My second year, I kind of learned it's more about the emotional sobriety side of things. My
To,
emotions in check, since I kind of balanced out and I had a foundation and a program. Now, how am I handling life?
yeah. So when you mean by the emotional stuff, it's like when life starts throwing you those curveballs, you now have the tools to help you kind of get through those, right? Because in the past, you would actually use those emotions and go, I don't want to feel these emotions, so you go back to using, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Um, yeah, like it's and it's cool this process because I was very dependent on my sponsor in the beginning. He's my guide to a higher power through the steps. And so I would call him a lot. When a problem arose, I would call him first, and he would point me to the book or tell me if I talked to God. And he was teaching me stop being dependent on him, and to start depending on my program and my higher power. And somewhere along the line, like those calls stopped. The calls stopped to him first. I would pray, I would meditate over my situation, I would hear from God, and then I would call him. I call him every day, and I have for 2+ years, but I would call him with these issues after it was resolved and just kind of inform him, like, "Hey, this happened. I took it to God. This was the solution that was presented." And like, it's pretty cool how it works.
Yeah, right. And I want to say it works on the other side as well. You know, when my ex-wife was going through her addiction, especially when she was in the depths of it, so many of us, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners who are on the other side can understand this. We do everything we can to be an addiction therapist, right? And not knowing anything about addiction, but we try really, really hard. And there finally comes a point, and at least it was for me, where I was finally like, I'm not able to do this, right? I don't like to use the word fix. I'm not able to help her get out of this, I don't know, this shithole that she's in.
Yeah.
And I remember not knowing how to do it. And I called a buddy, and he is very, very LDS. Called him up. I haven't fasted probably since I was like 13. Called him up, said, "Hey, how do you do this fasting thing again?" Right? Because I'm praying and I'm not getting any answers. And I went through and did this fasting thing. And I tell you what, it didn't take long before I got my answer. And I finally had to basically kind of do what you're saying, Justin. I had to throw in the towel and go, okay, everything I try is not working. All I do is mess stuff up even more. Now it's time for you to take over. And I've recently just had to do that again, right? Because I have been finding myself going back down that rabbit hole. not wanting to. The whole reason of getting away from this relationship was to pull myself away from that rabbit hole. And I started slipping back. And I finally just threw it in again, right? It's like, no, I cannot do this. And you have to rely on that strength of the higher power because I've hit my knees, I don't know how many times going, man, please help me get through this, right? Please help me make the right choices and the right decision. And please watch over this individual too, right? Because they're on their own now. I can't be there to save everyone. And that's what I wanted to do. And it's not possible.
I think it's funny too, like 'cause we have a solution. We know where to go for our answers. The self takes over so often that like I want to fix this, I want to do this, and like I always keep bumping my head. So finally, I've had enough pain or frustration to where like I give it to God.
Yeah.
I let Him take the wheel, and it's just so I won't say it's funny because it's kind of painful at times, but like how we just want to take it over.
Especially after probably a little over 2 years, right? Because I've heard of people go 2, 3 years, even 5 years. A matter of fact, I was just talking to a lady friend of mine at an event that I was at about a week ago, and it's happened with her ex-husband. And basically, I've been clean for a while, and I'm good now, right? I can go back out and start drinking. Well, he's back in recovery. So again, like what you just said, Justin, you think you finally have it. I'm just going to say it, you think you finally have the bull by the balls, and you don't at all. The bull still has you.
Yes. Uh, I'm so grateful for my sponsor, and those around me because like so I work in the field now. I'm a recovery coach and I work in a co-occurring field, mental health and substance use, and evidence-based program, and so I'm surrounded by recovery from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and like it gets exhausting, like that you're constantly taking on other people's issues and walking it through them. And my sponsor has been very clear with me and helpful in the sense that like, okay, I'm doing this for a profession, but I have to still be involved in my recovery. I still have to like go to meetings. I still have to do service. Or else I will lose touch. And then that day is going to come where I'll be a dry drunk. You know, I stopped working my program because I work in the field and I have it now. I'm not going to use because Monday through Friday, I'm surrounded by recovery, and I've watched like people that work in the field that aren't like maintaining their own program, still going to a meeting, still working with, sponsees or a sponsor, or that aren't involved in service. And I watch them just get irritable, restless, and discontent in their life. Like, and I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to fall into this thing where I think I've got it. Like I'm good now. I've got a couple years, so I don't need this no more. And I really do that by staying close to the first step. Like staying convinced that I cannot ever drink or use again. It's just not my path.
Yeah. Yeah. Because all it takes is that one time, right?
One,
I made a comment to this individual, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I said it's all about choice. And she says, no, it's not. She goes, because once you have that first drink, it's not about choice. And I says, no, it still is about choice because you chose to take that first drink, right? You didn't have to take that first drink because you knew once you took that first drink, you just said it yourself, you have no more choice, right? Because it's got you. It's got you because you can't take a sip out of that bottle without finishing it.
think and I hear it a lot, because the first step is admitting we are powerless. So like you hear a lot that AA is about being powerless. It's about being powerless, and I don't see it that way. I see it as, yeah, I'm powerless. I was powerless over drinking drugs. Today I'm empowered through my higher power. And like it is a choice today for me. I have the choice to stop working my program. I have the choice to pick up a bottle. I have a choice to hit a dope man up. To where before, when after I made that choice, I didn't have a choice anymore, But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I definitely agree. But it also says, like we're without defense, you know, against that drink, and it also tells us if we're not working a program or doing something to keep building that relationship with God, that like there's going to come that day where that obsession returns and I'm not going to be able to recall with sufficient force the misery I was in before that, and that's, I don't know, I guess it's just the necessity of staying in contact with your higher power and just staying focused on your recovery. That's my solution.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a great solution because I many of my guests have said that, right? It's just not the program. I mean, the program's there definitely to help, and AA isn't for everyone. There's other people that do other type of programs, so it's whatever fits that individual. However, it does not matter what that individual chooses that's different from yours or mine or someone else's. What they all have in common is that higher power. That's what's keeping them on track, right? It's not just the program itself or the sponsor, it's that higher power that's keeping them at ground level.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees in that, no matter what they believe helps them in their recovery.
Yeah, and that's it was kind of hard because I am full AA. That is my solution. That's what I'm familiar with. I have jumped around in different recovery groups. I've been to NA, CR, smart recovery. I've done outpatient therapy and everything. And this is I was ready. God had reached down and impacted me in a way,
In a
but
second.
like 8 seconds of clarity. And getting this job in a field, that deals with harm reduction was very difficult in the beginning for me because the literature I use, for my program tells me abstinence. And learning to be open and accepting of other people's pathways was kind of a hurdle, I had to get into. And actually, like I was introduced to it on TikTok. Believe it or not, like there's an amazing family out there, a recovery family on TikTok, where you have people that are involved in 12 step, you are people that just aren't. TikTok is, the recovery people on there is their program, people that are on maintenance stuff, people that are doing harm reduction. And it was really neat to see, like, on these lives, people from all over the country or world that have different pathways all come together and just support each other. And that kind of opened me up to the idea that there's other pathways and then this job. Um, but taking what I know from my experience and trying to apply it to somebody that's choosing a different path was a little hard at first, but I think in the end it's just being supportive of their path and doing what you can.
Yeah. I can imagine it would be hard, right? Because it worked for you. And you're not doing it out of ignorance. You're doing it out of love, right? You're going, hey, this worked for me. Come on, come on. And we have a tendency of pushing it, right? Instead of just going, wait a minute, maybe this is not a fit for you. Because we all learn differently, right? I've had some friends that can pick up a book on how to tear down a vehicle and read it and go tear down a vehicle. Me, I'm the type of person that could read the book 20 times and still not be able to tear down that vehicle. However, put somebody with me and show me, let me have my hands on in that experience, I'll tear down that vehicle. So we all have our own ways of grasping things, and it is hard to understand. I think that's why I was so crappy in school, because 15 minutes of sitting in a classroom, I was done. I did not want to be there anymore. I just wanted to go out and do something, and I don't know, nowadays, I guess they all of a sudden diagnose you with ADHD, I guess, and want to put you on pills. And I don't think I was that bad like that. It's just that wasn't my learning. I would rather be shown, instead of sitting in a classroom reading a book. It just didn't fit for me. So I'm guessing that's how recovery is for everyone as well. We're all our own individuals and it's different.
Yeah, and I learned the same way too, by the way.
Oh,
I can't read a book. I can't, like, it's taken a lot. And it's reading the big book for me in my recovery, but applying it, doing the action and getting some direction is how I learn. Like, rather than I can't retain anything from just reading or listening to somebody. I have to put in the work to,
yeah.
to learn the stuff. But yeah, it's I've also learned too with this that, like, there are concepts and principles within, what I've learned through my literature I use that I can apply into groups and one-on-ones for people that choose a different path. There's a lot of common words used just in recovery in general, that no matter what your path is or program, it fits.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know individuals who are in long-term recovery, and that's how they like to say it, right? They don't say, "Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm an addict," because they don't want to label themselves as an addict. So they've changed the literature now. However, there's some groups though that's exactly how they want you to say it,
Yeah,
and they've even said what you just said, Justin. It's like I've had to learn how to accept it. Right? This is my way. That's their way. My way works for me, their way works for them. And because I used to tell my ex-wife that all the time too, when I'd go to AA meetings with her, and to support her, and she'd get up and go, "Hi, my name's Janan and I'm an alcoholic." And I remember so many times would leave the meeting and it would be jumping in the car and I'm like, "Why do you keep saying you're an alcoholic? Why are you labeling yourself?" Right? I don't understand it. I couldn't get it because I mean that would be like me not able to read a book and say, "You know what, I'm stupid," and constantly tell myself I'm labeling myself. However, again, it goes back to what works for each individual.
yeah, yeah. I had a problem. Uh, I'll say I was on this kick in the years back when I was coming in and out of the program. Like, the label, the identity piece was important to me then. Like, I also feel like I was in denial, but um, I wouldn't like to be like, "Hi, I'm Justin, I'm an addict," or "Hi, I'm Justin, I'm an alcoholic," because then I felt like I was placing my identity into just being an alcoholic and an addict, and I'm way more than that. So I would say, "I'm Justin, I'm in recovery." And then as I, like, grown, now I just say Justin alcoholic. It's an aspect of who I am. And I say alcoholic at AA just for the traditions and the respect of the program. And I say Justin addict at NA because
Yeah.
traditions and respect for the program. But that identity piece was huge for me in the beginning, years back before I got sober for the last time, I'll say. And not so much anymore, but yeah, I hear people in meetings say all sorts of things,
Yeah.
whatever works for them.
You know, um, Something that you was talking about earlier, that if you're not working the program and really you're not using your higher power. And I watched this with my ex-wife, she went 2.5 years sober, lapsed twice during that 2.5 years. And then this past July relapsed, and it's been nonstop since, right? It's a week here, 2 weeks there. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who I work with who is in long-term recovery. And he basically was asking me a bunch of questions and trying to get the whole picture of everything. And he's like, you know what? All she did those 2.5 years was white knuckle it, because she didn't go to the pro, she wasn't going to meetings. Her sponsor dropped her, because her sponsor's like, you're not working the program, so you don't need me, right? If you're not going to listen to what I'm saying, then find somebody else, because I'm not going to be that person. And I really started thinking about it, and I started connecting the dots backwards, and the whole picture was painted right in front of me. He was 100% right. It was white knuckling it those whole 2.5 years. And I think that's also what pushed me away even further, right? Because it was clashing heads constantly, constantly. And I think it's because of what she was battling. And then, of course, I was battling my own issues with everything.
Yeah. That, I'm gonna say something probably controversial, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Well, no, no,
Um,
don't mind at all.
so like, uh, if you can identify yourself, I can't tell somebody if they're an addict or an alcoholic, or a real addict or real alcoholic. I'll use how AA defines a real alcoholic. That's separated. There's moderate, hard, and a real, and you kind of can place yourself in one of those three categories. And if you find yourself on like the real alcoholic side of things, I learned that very quickly that a lot of AA meetings where I've been at, there's a lot of hard drinkers. And to me, as the book describes, those are people with, that can just go to meetings, make some friends, maybe be on probation, but just go to meetings and stay sober. Uh, that's all they need. But if you find yourself on the real alcoholic side, like I am, or addict, and meetings won't just do it. Like I don't. This is the controversial part. Like I don't want to me for to be who I am, knowing that I'm a real alcoholic and an addict, that meetings is not recovery for me. And in my opinion, if you're going to a 12-step group, trying to water this down a little bit,
Well, you don't
like,
you don't have to, man. Throw it out there. That's what this show's
well,
about.
meetings isn't recovery. It's an aspect of it. Like I just found, by just going to put my legs under a table, that nothing was changing. My behaviors were the same. There was no psychic change. I was still the same person. I was just going to meetings. I was abstaining, is all that was happening. And when that obsession comes back, the disease creeps in, I have no defense against it. Like AA is not meetings. AA is the 12 steps. It's the
Mhm.
program of action. It's what's outlined in the big book. That's AA. Like I didn't get sober to go sit my ass in a meeting every day and have my sobriety be contingent upon a meeting. That's just not how it works. Um, I needed a solution which I could live by, and that was a relationship with a higher power. And you get that by working the 12 steps. And I just think there's a lot of people that think just going to meetings today is recovery, and that they're going to be healed by just going to sit their ass at a meeting. And then what I've seen in my experience is that like people go, they puke all over the table, talk about all life's problems, they feel good for that day, and they leave, and they have to come back the next day to do it to get that relief. A friend told me when I first came in, uh, she said, meetings should be pep rallies. You should walk into a meeting and you should hear some good experiences, some solutions, the program, not go in and hear a bunch of people's problems, like people bitching about their problems. And if they are, what are they doing about it? Now, I don't want to take away too, because sometimes you're having a shitty day and you need some help, and coming into a meeting and being like, hey, I just lost my uncle. I don't know what to do. That's a little different to me, because then that opens the door for people to provide some solutions for you. But I still think that's something that should be taking place after a meeting or with your sponsor to get help. So
Yeah.
my opinion, meetings aren't recovery, but um, I got sober to have a life worth living, to take part in society and the world, and not to have to be at a meeting every day to stay sober.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I'm glad that you threw that out there, right? Because I've had other guests say that same thing as well. That's why I'm like, spit it out, because that's what this show's about. It's raw. So I want people to say what's on their mind. And I think anybody that's in long-term recovery gets it, right? They respect other people's thoughts on it or opinions on it. When kind of go back to your story here a little bit, Justin, when was it when things started for you? I mean, did you figure out what it was that you was numbing, right? Or was it just something that just kind of happened by accident? I've got a friend who is also the co-founder of the Healing Utah Success Summit and 4.0 student, always A's, great, great kid. Her mom was an addict, but she wasn't going to go down that road, and started hanging out with some older kids, older boys, right? That was in college. She's in high school, starting to go to parties, starting to get drunk, waking up feeling like crap. Someone gives her an oxy. She starts feeling a little bit better. Then pretty soon it's heroin. Then pretty soon it's, I mean, it just, as you know, right? It just plummets from there. It implodes. And well, I have to take that back, because she did say her dad left her at age 4. So she felt that abandonment all the way up into her teenage years. And she said she figured out that's probably what she was covering up, not even realizing that's what she was trying to numb. Was that for you? I mean, did you start at an early age? I think my earliest guess, he was a full-blown alcoholic by the time he was in junior high school.
mine, I think, really started around the age of like 13, like smoking weed and drinking. Um, Prior to that, so my mom and dad divorced when I was really young, like a baby, one or two. Uh, don't remember it. And she remarried, and the guy she married wasn't the best fellow in the world. He was old school military. His mom was a very cold parent to him, and he just was physically and emotionally and mentally abusive. He liked to do things to hurt me physically. He liked to remind me every day that no one loved me, that I was a loser, that I was a failure, that I was never going to be anything, that my dad didn't love me, because there were some weekends where my dad couldn't show up to get me. And like, he'd see me sitting at the window waiting for my dad to pull up, and he'd take that chance to remind me that my dad didn't love me, and um, just talk real reckless to me. And
Mm.
so I think that, like, that played a major role in it, because like I've always had self-esteem issues, low self-worth, didn't feel like I was good enough or loved. My mom was working a lot, and there is an aspect in there too that my mom didn't believe this was happening, or was denying it sometimes. Uh, and I don't like to talk about that, because I don't like. It's confusing with my mom in the sense that she did the best she could, and I know that
Mhm.
today. And I love my mom very much. She's a part of my life. We have a good relationship today, and I know today also that it's hard when you're married to somebody and everything's combined to get a way out.
Yeah.
You know, successfully, especially when you have three kids that are with you. You know, you can't just pack your shit and take off and not go. And like, but it was pretty rough, and I started to rebel. I wasn't the best kid either at that point. Um, I stole a lot from him when I could. I had no respect for him. As bad as he was to me, I was just as bad back. And when we finally left, uh, I was just going into high school and was introduced to a whole different group of people. And with that came weed and drinking, and I found something that made me feel like I fit in and I was cool, and I had some friends finally. Because the other part growing up was that like I spent a lot of time grounded and forced in my room. I couldn't leave my room or standing in the corner for hours. There was times where he made me sleep in the corner, and like there were actually, here's another thing that came up. At one aspect, I had a bedwetting problem when I was a kid into my late single digit years. And I don't know why. It was just something physically, or if I know there was fear there of getting up,
Hmm.
you know. And we were doing a walk or something. And then on our way back in our apartment complex, there's a basketball hoop out back. And there's a bunch of the kids from the apartment playing basketball. And he's like, hey, why don't you go tell those kids how much you hate me? And I'm like, no. And he's like, no, go do it. It's fine. Let them know that I'm such an asshole, and like, just go do it. It's fine. You won't get in trouble. Go do it. Go do it. And he convinced me to go tell them that I hated them. And I thought he was for real. Like, it was okay. So as a kid, I cheerfully ran up and told them all that like he's an asshole. I hate him, and ran back to him. And he goes, did you tell him? I'm like, yeah. Okay. So then we get inside the house or the apartment. And he goes, all right, now go tell him you pissed the bed. I'm like, no. He goes, go tell him you still pissed the bed. And I wouldn't. And he said, all right, I will. And he walked right out and told all the kids that I still pissed the bed. And with
Wow.
that came a lot of torment from them and teasing and picking on. And so that probably shaped a lot of my, rebellion as a kid, and the need and wanting people to like me because I didn't have that. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. And so when we moved out, I fell in with that group, and then I started like um, not coming home. I have a younger brother that's autistic, that has autism. Let me rephrase that. That has autism, and a sister a year or two older than him. And like my mom worked, so I was supposed to be home to get the kids off the bus, and get them inside and get them a snack. And like I wouldn't show up. I would leave them stranded on our doorstep because I was off running and smoking weed, doing drugs, drinking, and whatever. And my mom kicked me out. So, and I hated her for it. I hated her for so long. I don't think we spoke for a few years after that. 'Cause I moved in with my dad, and it's cool. What this is an experience I had with God at one point. That I was in the car. We were carpooling to work with this woman that was a little older than me at the time, but she had a child that was in jail, and he had called her to come home. He's like, Mom, I want to come home, but he's addicted to drugs. He's been physically abusive to her husband at the time, which wasn't his dad. And like, she had to tell him no. Safety for his little sister that lived there, and then her husband, she had to protect her family. And she bawled when she hung up the phone. Like, she bawled. It broke her heart to tell her son, no, he couldn't come home because of, his actions. And watching that just opened up the door for me to see that, like, My mom didn't kick me out because she hated me or that she didn't love me. My mom kicked me out because I was a horrible kid, and I wasn't respectful, and she had to protect my brother and sister.
Yeah.
And God revealed that to me. And that was pretty cool.
Wow. That was definitely an aha moment.
Yeah. I didn't obviously, and those are the choices we get to make because I didn't latch onto it and continue down that road. I did talk to her and told her, like I understand now, but um yeah, I didn't stay too long after that. But
Yeah.
and then when I moved in with my dad, I had free reign, fell into harder drugs as I got older, played sports, got injured, got introduced to Vicodin, uh, drank a lot, found out Vicodin was a cure, which progressed to a cure for hangovers, progressed to Oxycontin eventually, which came to heroin and off and running. I've been to jail too many times. I've been to prison twice, rehab a few times. It's just overdose, all of it.
Oh my gosh, even overdose, huh? Holy cow.
So I was always pretty careful using right prior my second time, my last time out there. I got yeah, I was at work and I went into the bathroom and shot up and apparently it was a bad batch. There's fentanyl in it and I was done. I was out. Thank God one of my managers thought I'd been acting fishy already the last few weeks because I was using again, but watched me go into the bathroom and not come out for a minute and ended up coming in and seeing me in the stall laid out on the floor, kicked it in and seen I was blue, called 911 and started to like do what he did. And, they came and rushed me to the hospital. And thank God I survived, but
Hmm.
scary.
Wow.
But that wasn't enough because when I got out of the hospital, however many hours later, I went right back home and tried to shoot up. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely know that, and it's not from my experiences by watching someone else. And again, it's hard to see, right? It's hard to see, and I've had so many people say that when they thought they hit rock bottom, their rock bottom went further.
yeah,
It's like I don't know if there really is such thing as a rock bottom when you're battling, with addiction, because yeah, it just destroys everything around you. And one of my guests who I interviewed out of Canada, she said she woke up one morning and she's laying on her carpet, and her face pressed against the carpet, and she opens her eyes and her dog's laying there looking at her. And she's like, what the hell am I doing? And it was after a night of drinking and drugging, and doesn't remember how she got on the floor, doesn't remember anything about the night before. And she goes, it was at that time when I finally realized it was time to put down the shovel. I have dug enough. I've dug my hole as deep as I want to go anymore, and now it's time to fill that hole back up. And she's been clean and sober, gosh, for quite a few years now. So this person that I talk about, I just keep wondering what's going to be the rock bottom. Is it going to be her out on the streets? Because she won't make it. She won't make it on the streets. However, that could be her rock bottom. Either that or it's going to take her life, one or the other.
yeah, and it sucks because like I said, I've been to prison over my addiction. I've been to jail. I've been homeless, had overdose, and landed in the hospital. And what this time where I decided to do something, and I think putting an effort into this is one of the reasons why I was granted that 8 seconds of clarity from God. Like, so I just talked about that overdose. I went to rehab just to appease the woman I was with, got out, picked back up like a week later. And finally, after a few months, she just finally had it. She had it, and she told me to get my shit and get out of the house. Um, which okay, I've been homeless before, right? Like I can survive. I know this. And I was annoyed, irritated. I was able to muster up enough anger at her for it not to break me, like to push me to a point where I was just devastated from that. Um, but what hit me really, really hard was going out and saying goodbye to her boys.
Hmm.
And then like look at me, and the youngest look at me and like with tears in his eyes. Does that mean you're not coming back? That hurt. That hit me a little different. And so I left and I went and bought a bag. And my idea was, like there's a lot of shame, a lot of hurt, was to do all of this in one shot and not wake up. And that wasn't the case. I did it and I came to the next morning on a park bench and knew something had to change. And that's when I made the call to get into rehab, get separated from, the drugs. And she ended up calling like an hour later, 2 hours later, and telling me to come back home and let's talk. And when I did, I told her I already made the call to the rehab. And then I went for like the 8-day detox, 7-day, 8-day, 9. I don't, whatever days it was. But then when I got home thinking everything was okay, that's when the 8 seconds of clarity came that night. But it's just weird that I feel like I went through much worse prior to that, you know. That's the point where everybody's rock bottom looks different,
Yeah.
like prison wasn't enough, overdosing wasn't enough, being homeless on the street wasn't enough, breaking a little kid's heart apparently
That was it.
was enough to wake you up. And then when you try to use a different solution that fails, it's like, all right, I tap, like I tried to take, and I don't want to say an easy way out, because like purposely overdosing or trying to, suicide is not a solution, but that was my easy way out, like to not feel anything, and when that failed, it's like, all right, what the hell? Now what? All right, let's do something about this.
You know, I think that was another sign from God, right? Because
Yeah,
he needed you here to do what you're doing right now. Anyway, that's how I'm seeing it. My friend who I was talking about earlier, who I work with, he was really struggling with his addiction, and he said he had finally had enough and got his gun, cocked a bullet in the chamber, put it up to his head, pulled the trigger, didn't go off. He's like, "What?" And he popped the bullet out. The pin hit the bullet, didn't go off.
wow.
And he said that was his sign. He's like, "I'm not supposed to go." And now he's doing like you're doing. I mean, he's very well known. There's a place here in Salt Lake called Renaissance Ranch. They have one for females, one for males, and I mean, gosh, he's like a god out there, right? Everyone goes to Cap to talk to him about their problems and different things, and he's living up to it, and he loves doing it. And he does our electrical work, and I've been pounding on him. We're like, dude, you need to hang up this electrical shit. You need to go get your freaking license, right? Because he's good. That he is that good, and I mean, I don't even think I'd print him out a certificate just to say, yeah, you passed. Because in my eyes, the way he comes across and the way he makes you open your mind up is just amazing. And
Yeah,
that was his second chance, and he knew it, right? I mean, when you pop the shell out and you see the pin hit the freaking oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. And I used to be big in hunting. Anyway, hit the cartridge and it don't go off. Yeah, somebody's definitely telling you something.
yeah, that gave me goosebumps. That's
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, we all have I think our own little sign. And I don't know. I've had some of my own spiritual things and I've been on the other side of it, right? And it's crazy. And mine didn't even last 8 seconds. Mine was just like it was a blink. And I was on a hike one day, and this was when my ex-wife was in the depths of her addiction. And I went on an early spring hike. And I don't know if you've ever been to Salt Lake, but our mountains are just like right here. I mean, in 30 to 35 minutes, you're 10,000 feet up, right? And we've got some really amazing trails. And I was hiking up to this lake called Lake Blanche. And it's a little over about 10-mile hike round trip. And snow's getting deep. And I kept telling myself, I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if I can make it. I didn't have the right equipment. I didn't have snowshoes. Next thing I knew, which is, whew, I get emotional thinking about it sometimes, Justin. I realize that I'm at the top, and there's this little teeny hill that you have to kind of come up over and crest up, and the lake is right there. The wind's blowing. And as soon as I break up on that crest, the wind completely stops. I mean, nothing. I'm looking around, nobody's there. I'm the only one there. Usually, the rocks I sit on, you can't sit on because everything's covered in snow. The lake is completely frozen over. And I find this little teeny spot, and I sit down and I take my backpack off. And as soon as I glance over to my left to start looking at the horizon, I instantly broke down in tears out of nowhere. And literally, I'm going, what the hell is wrong with me? I mean, I'm not talking just sobbing. I mean, tears were just pouring down my face. And I'm looking and I'm scanning the whole horizon. It's just beautiful up there and it's covered in snow. I've not seen it like that before. And I got to my right, and just for a second, I felt something touch my right shoulder, and I hear everything will be okay. And there was somebody standing right there. And I hurried and jumped and looked, and there was no one. And I'm going, what the hell just happened? And I start hearing some voices, and this couple comes up over. And as soon as they come up over and crest upon the hill, the wind kicked up and started blowing again. It was one of the I mean, I was so freaked out about it. As soon as I got out of the canyon, I called my friend Lori up and I think I'm losing it, man, because this just happened to me. And she goes, Al, you just had a spiritual moment. And I really needed that at that time. Really freaking needed it at that time because I was literally about ready to lose it. And to hear that quick little voice just to say, so my story, instead of being 8 seconds of clarity, mine would be like 1 second of clarity, right? Because it was that fast. But there was someone standing there. I freaking seen him. I don't know who, but there was a body there. And I felt that hand touch my shoulder. And yeah, that's why I still get emotional sometimes thinking about it, because it really changed me that day.
Amazing.
So our work that we are doing, right? I think this was the path. We went on our journey for a reason, right? You had to experience everything you had to experience to put you exactly where you're at right now, Justin. And now you're out there helping other individuals in their journey. And I like to think of it the same way over here, even on my side, right? To give a platform for people to come in and feel safe and feel like they're not being judged, and to be able to open up and share a part of their life that they're not proud of, and even the trauma that they went through, right? I mean, I've had people come on the show that uh, men and women, who was sexually abused from a young age all the way up into their teen years before they could finally get out and get away from it. And of course, they fell on drugs and alcohol, and it's always around that puberty time, right? Between 11 and 13 and 14, somewhere around there. And to see who they are today as individuals, and see what they're doing with their life, and see how many lives they are touching. God needed you to do his work, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, you know, when AA, they talk about we don't shut the door on our past. And like my first years in recovery and around it, I just wanted to be like, oh, I'm done with it. Past is the past. And I wanted to close that door. And I didn't realize how significant everything I've gone through is. Like how I can use my experiences to help somebody else out, to relate to somebody else. And yeah, God was definitely not done with me, and He had a plan for me.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And he's probably still not done, right? Who knows what the future's gonna bring.
Exciting to think about. I can't like my life today doesn't look like how I thought it would as a kid before all of this, or better than I could have imagined in my addiction. You know, it's just what this program has done, what God has done. Like I actually have a life worth living today. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So with you saying that, Justin, gosh, we've come up on an hour already. It goes by so flippin' quick. What would you want our listeners to gain from this show? And what would be your main message? And you can answer both or one, just whatever comes to you.
It's like don't give up. Um, all there is multiple pathways to this, and ultimately, I don't give a shit what you choose. If it's 12 steps, if it's smart recovery or harm reduction, um, do this, and you're not alone. I think we spend so much time like our way is right. You have to follow this that we don't look at the bigger picture that there are people dying out there. I've lost a lot of people I care about from addiction, and that you don't have to be alone. There's support out there. Someone asked me today, what is the most valuable thing I have? Your typical answer in recovery is going to be God or my sobriety, but outside of that cliche answer, it would be my friendships, relationships I have today. Because without the people in my corner, like those few really close friends, like I don't know where I would be.
Yeah.
That's important. I don't have to do this journey alone.
Amen. Opposite addiction is connection, right? And that's what you've done. Yeah. Wow. This has been awesome. And before I forget, I usually say it at the beginning of the show, and I just want to say thank you to Kirk, for introducing us. I love that kid, and such. Yeah, I we've already been talking about possibly having him come back for a second time, so he can share about where his life's at right now. I just love the hell out of that kid. We've never met in person, and I hope one day we have that opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirk. Hopefully he'll watch this, but appreciate you, brother, for the introduction. That was cool. He was an amazing dude.
Yes, yes, he is. Yeah, he's sent a few people over to me, which I greatly appreciate. Well, Justin, thank you for your time. I don't want to take a lot of your time because I know you got a lot of people to help out there. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for opening up, sharing a part of your life. Yeah, and just thank you for what you're doing. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving people like me a platform to talk about our recovery and our experiences. That's super important. So thank you.
Absolutely. Guys, again, thank you to all our listeners, all our guests, all our sponsors. Guys, we couldn't do this without you. You guys are the ones that's making this possible. It's not really me. Justin just said it, I'm just giving you guys a platform to come on and say what it is that you want to say. Remember this, guys, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.